Okay, so let's just start with the Abrego Garcia case. This is the guy who was found by two courts to be MS13, and they said you're deported, but they said, all right, we'll suspend your removal because we've been convinced you shouldn't be shipped back to El Salvador because there's this gang there that you say wants to kill you. That could have been lifted immediately once that gang had been eliminated by the El Salvadoran president. We didn't really do anything about it. Instead, we just turned him out back in society. He's been roaming for 6 years. And then Tom Homan found him. And now he's become the poster boy for the left because we weren't technically supposed to send him to El Salvador. We did. But he has absolutely no right to stay in the United States.
Yeah, that's right.
Something strange is happening. Something strange is happening in the case where the last 2 days, the Trump administration has been filing things under seal so that we can't see what they are. They filed their status report about him. They're supposed to be telling everybody how he is under seal. And then they filed a motion to stay discovery in the case, stop proceedings under seal. And that was just granted. The judge in this case, Paula Zinnes, an Obama appointee, agreed to stay discovery in this case until April 30th. So she's put the whole thing on pause. Now, Margot Cleveland, who also does a great job covering this for The Federalist, she had speculation. Her guess was that possibly Trump's working with the El Salvadoran government to arrange for his release, not permanently, but possibly to come back here, step foot on U.S. soil, and then immediately be deported to someplace other than El Salvador, which would completely erase the Dems' argument on him. But what do you make of this weirdness around him?
For the recent weirdness, I agree. The government has somehow probably finagled his release from El Salvadoran prison, and the reason I say that is Judge Zinnes had been very aggressive with the government about trying to locate this guy and very dismissive of the government's concerns. So for her to suddenly stop being so aggressive on that front and agree to a week-long stay, I don't see happening on her own accord. I don't see happening unless there is some sort of arrangement being made for this guy to, who knows, maybe be at the El Salvadoran embassy, maybe just be released from custody in El Salvador proper, but something that the plaintiffs would be okay with. Because the other thing is that the plaintiffs agreed to this stay of discovery, and they'd also been extremely aggressive in trying to get these things done.
All right, so the latest news on his case is not great for Trump, and maybe this is playing a role here in what's happening behind the scenes, maybe it's not, but there was an Economist YouGov poll released yesterday that showed 50% of Americans say Trump should bring Abrego Garcia back to the U.S. Only 28% say he should not. 27% of Americans say Abrego Garcia is a member of the MS13 gang. Only 30%, I should say, believe he is not a member of the gang. 43% not sure. This is obviously a result of the very biased media coverage on this issue, where everybody's been telling them that he's just a Maryland dad. But it's not a case that Trump wants to lose either the legal or the PR war on. So what do you think he should do with this guy at this point?
Well, I mean, I think the reasonable course here is to either, with him still in El Salvador or when he's here, you should go to court and get that withholding of removal lifted. And you can do that, honestly, without him even being present, because you don't even need new evidence. It's the simplest way to get him removed is to say that because the immigration judge and the Board of Immigration Appeals found that he was a member of MS13, that he's stopped from challenging that going forward. And since the government declared MS13 a foreign terrorist organization, it's just a straightforward legal conclusion that the guy is no longer eligible for withholding of removal. And so he has to go back.
And that can be done if he needs to participate at all. It can be done via Zoom. He doesn't have to be on U.S. soil.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, and if you needed another argument, I don't think you would, but it's the argument you just talked about, the one about the fact that the Barrio 18 gang that supposedly is extorting his mother's pupusa shop well after its closure, that gang is no longer functional in El Salvador because Nayib Bukele has transformed El Salvador into one of the safest countries in the Western Hemisphere.
Wow. So the shop is no longer there, and the gang that was targeting the business is no longer there. And the only thing that's really no longer there is Abrego Garcia, and he needs to be there. He's in El Salvador, but not yet free as far as we know. You've been calling attention because a lot of people have been casting doubt now on these two immigration court's findings that he is MS-13. It came up in the context of should we give him bond while we're trying to decide what to do with him? And 2 judges said, no, we should not. This guy's MS-13. People aren't buying it because they're not following people like you on X and following actual reporting. One of the reasons they say he's probably not, his defenders, and even the district court judge in this case said, well, they said this informant said he was a member of the, quote, Western Clique within MS-13, and that group only operates on Long Island in New York, and he's in Maryland. So, the confidential informant was wrong, and he can't be MS-13.
Yeah, except that the Western Clique does actually operate in Maryland, and DOJ has routinely claimed that in any number of filings, plea agreements, indictments. I am unclear that this claim came from the underlying complaint just filed by one plaintiff's lawyer, where he said that the DOJ has said that they operate in New York, a place where Abrego Garcia has never lived. As far as I can tell, he basically just invented this out of thin air based on doing one quick search on the DOJ website for Western Clique MS-13, and there's only one result that pops up, which is this double murder where a member of the Western Clique was actually a victim of the double murder, but it has no analysis of where does the Western Clique operate. And MS-13 cliques operate all around the country. They're generally, it's, part of the history of MS-13, as I've recently learned, is it started when a bunch of El Salvadoran gangbangers were deported back to El Salvador, I think under the Reagan administration. And then they, took over El Salvador largely. And then they started sending, the cliques were actually named after streets in Los Angeles, but they ended up sending people all over the country. So yeah, the Western Clique operates in Maryland. DOJ has said that repeatedly. And it's honestly, if I were Judge Zinnes, I'd be really embarrassed and very angry at the plaintiff's lawyer because basically his complaint had me put a blatant and obvious falsehood, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm, right. You point out that there's at least a November 1st, 2011 RICO indictment. That's racketeering. It's like they used it to go after the mob and sometimes gangs by the government against members of MS-13, not this guy. But in that, they argued specifically that MS-13 affiliates operate within the Washington, D.C. metro area, including the Western Clique. So I didn't realize it's clique instead of clique. In any event, it's in writing right there from the federal government, long predating Donald Trump. This is 2011. That would have been Barack Obama's DOJ saying that. So the other thing is they say, well, you can't use the fact that he was wearing a hoodie, a Chicago Bulls hoodie and cap against him. But we've taken a look at the immigration judge who initially denied the bond to him. And the truth is, Will, she placed almost no importance on that. And she wrote that she was placing almost no importance on that. But the truth is also, it is very relevant. That is how they dress.
Correct. And I think, honestly, the most relevant piece of information, which again was omitted from all the public media reporting, was that the guy was arrested in the company of 2 other confirmed members of MS-13.
You don't hang out with those guys?
I mean, when I go get coffee sometimes, I guess I get bored. But the concept being that that you ask a normal person on the street, well, what would be the most relevant evidence of this person being an MS-13? I don't know, hanging out with MS-13 members. And as a result, you see this poll, and it's totally a product of the plaintiff's lawyer and the media working together to just put out falsehoods and otherwise mislead both judges and the public. And it's pretty clear that the guy is MS-13. And, oddly enough, I think ultimately it really shouldn't matter that much because he is an illegal alien and he was crossed into the country in 2012, got detained in 2019, and somehow still is here in 2025. I mean, it shouldn't matter, but in the sense that there's this massive PR campaign to try and get this guy back. Well, yeah, he is actually an MS-13, and also he's a wife beater, and I don't know why we are eager to return this guy to his family when, he was beating his U.S. citizen wife. And people assume, well, the wife says she wants him back. It's like, well, I mean, is she afraid of what his colleagues might do to her? There's a whole bunch of interesting dynamics that aren't really being explored here.
That is a very good question. She went on Good Morning America last week when this whole thing was coming to a point, and her attempted rehabilitation of him after it broke that she had accused him of being a wife beater was pathetic. I mean, it was absolutely half-hearted. And I hadn't even considered until you just said it that it was out of fear of what some of the other MS-13 gang members might do. We're going to pull it over and I'll play it in 1 second as soon as we have it. Before we get to that, though, you pointed out that another great Twitter follow, which is a guy who goes by Shipwreck Crew on Substack. And this guy had some very interesting posts about ICE and how it operates. And this was news, too. He was calling to our attention that the determination by ICE and Maryland police, for that matter, that Abrego Garcia was a member of MS-13 was not made lightly. And he points out because these determinations are absolutely critical in preventing violence inside either a jail or a detention center, that while you and I are going about our lives wondering whether it's clique or clique, the people who have to arrest these people and then put them in detention centers or jails actually must figure out whether they're gang members and which gang.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, I think Bill Shipley, who goes by Shipwreck Crew on Twitter, he had a number of really interesting points. That was a key one. Yeah, I mean,
they
obviously
fight internally.
Right, exactly. And I mean, you realize immigration judges probably handle MS-13 issues and foreign gang issues far more often than a district court judge who, is dealing with a wide, sprawling variety of cases, as opposed to an immigration judge who's just seeing deportation and removal in front of them. So I think there's a big meta issue with regard to the lack of respect being accorded to the immigration judge and the immigration courts here. I mean, if you read that district court opinion, it just completely dismisses the findings of the original immigration judge as being based on nothing, based on sparse evidence. And she's doing this on in the posture of reviewing an injunction where she hasn't gotten any real factual record developed in front of her. She just is, she was just taking the word of the plaintiff's lawyer in the complaint, which, as we discussed earlier, was really not a very credible person.
That's right. Not worthy of trusting whatsoever. And then another point, and I saw this too in Andy McCarthy's article over at National Review, that Abrego Garcia's defenders are making is that, I don't want to screw it up, is that there's been no evidence since 2019 and that immigration judge and then the appellate court above her that he's a member of MS-13. Like maybe he's no longer a member of MS-13. Maybe he's like a reformed member of MS-13. But this guy, Bill Shipley, is pointing out that his own complaint reveals that after he was arrested in March by ICE, quote, he was shown several photos where he appeared in public and asked about other people in those photos, but was unable to provide any information on them as he did not know them or anything about them. Now, that his defenders say is proof he didn't know these gang members. Like, he doesn't know. He has no idea. And Shipwreck Crew and you see it differently.
Yeah, it seems like if they're asking him these questions, they're kind of wondering, like, do you know this person? Because they probably identified him as maybe an MS-13 gang member himself. Maybe they know. Maybe they don't. But the fact that he would renounce knowing people in photos when being asked by police is not proof that that is true. It's not proof that he doesn't know those people.
It's even more sketchy.
Yeah, I'm not one to believe that gang members are particularly fulsome with police, especially ones that have a gang motto of "see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil."
Yes,
I think it actually might be "see nothing, hear nothing." Might not quite be that, but it's something along those lines. He's pointing out here that every ICE office would have prioritized their targets based on their own files. The Prince George's County, Maryland law enforcement, that they have an MS-13 gang unit, and obviously they have an MS-13 gang problem. And so it's, all these things sort of come together. And then there was the wife and that exchange on GMA. Here it is.
And I know this is a sensitive question, but I have to ask it. You did take out a temporary order of protection against your husband in 2021. Were you in fear of your husband?
Husband is alive. That's all I can say.
What?
Okay. And I'm not going to push on that, apparently.
Will, it's not a great answer.
No, it's not. And I think maybe, this is where maybe you originally think, oh, she's covering for him. But I think there's, you can see her pause and think really hard for a second. And I think that's where, my analysis or my theory is that's fear. And that's fear of saying the wrong thing and what will happen to her if she does. I mean, if he is indeed an MS-13, MS-13 still operates in Maryland. And I'm sure they are not keen on people ratting out their members for even, beating their wives. I don't assume they have some, internal HR processes in MS-13 to deal with domestic abuse. So
the other thing is the smuggling, the alleged human smuggling or trafficking, because this came out, I think it was the Tennessee Star that first broke it, but he was pulled over in 2022 in a car. And the evidence that Just the News just came out with this report, which is interesting. They say he was stopped by police in an SUV owned by a man who was himself deported after pleading guilty to smuggling illegal aliens in 2020. Well, that's not great. That's his bud. Some guy who pleaded guilty already to smuggling illegal aliens into the country in 2020, citing Homeland Security intel. And on top of that, they go on to say that the El Salvadoran driving the car was driving a black 2001 Chevy Suburban, said he was transporting his passengers to Maryland from Texas for construction work, although the state trooper found no luggage in the SUV. These are bad facts for Mr. Abrego Garcia. He's not the driver, but he's in the car. Why? What's the story with this guy? Then they say the owner of the vehicles had been identified as Jose Ramon Hernandez Reyes. Abrego Garcia told the state trooper that the owner was his boss. They say, Baltimore field office, they said, believe this belonged to a target they suspected of human trafficking or smuggling. And so all of this is circumstantial evidence, but it's powerful. And these people who don't believe he's an MS-13 have heard none of it. Tariff wars, stubborn inflation. No wonder gold has been routinely hitting all-time highs. In volatile markets like the one we have now, do not sit on the sidelines with your head in the sand. You can take control and safeguard your savings. That's why so many Americans today are turning to Birch Gold Group. They have helped tens of thousands convert an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in physical gold. Is it time for you to hedge against economic instability with gold? To learn how to own physical gold in a tax-sheltered account, text MK to the number 989898. Birch Gold will send you a free, no-obligation info kit. Again, text MK to the numbers 989898. With an A-plus rating with the Better Business Bureau and countless 5-star reviews, Birch Gold has helped so many protect their savings with gold. It took us decades to get into the tangled mess they're trying to unpack now in D.C. How long is it going to take for us to get out of it, and at what cost? Text MK to 989898 today. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.